Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter and analyst for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. Today's episode, we are just going to be hanging out. Happy Friday, everybody. I want to get into the chat, get into whatever questions you guys have. I am on a timer here. I have about 45 minutes. I'm flying out to New York. My son's first time going to New York. Very excited about that. We're doing a family trip for the next week. So got some pre-recorded content that will be coming out next week, doing some clips off of the grades episodes and then doing today's live. But shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. Whenever you guys have questions, I am ready to roll. First one from Paul. He asks, Jovan, what moves do you think the Lakers will make this offseason? I think it's a fool's errand to try to predict the specific moves. One move I will say I'm fairly confident in is that they will re-sign Austin Reaves. I don't know exactly what the number is going to be, but I think it will be north of 35 million. I think 35 average annual value is the floor. So that's one move I expect them to make. I expect them to retain Jackson Hayes. I expect them to try to retain Rui Hachimura and Marcus Smart, depending on the numbers for each of those guys. And I expect them to try to retain LeBron as well, but that will be a little bit more complicated with the negotiation element and just how he feels about what they are presenting. Outside of that, in terms of specific moves, I think they're going to be active on the trade market, and they are uniquely positioned to acquire players into their cap space. So if a team like an Oklahoma City, an Orlando, a Cleveland is looking to dump some money, they can absorb those contracts into their cap space. I expect them to be active on the free agent market and restricted free agent market, but restricted free agency is pretty complicated, and I don't know if they'll be able to pull off a Walker Kessler, Peyton Watson. So it's difficult to say specific names here. I think we know some of the names that they're already linked to, that they've been interested in dating back to last season. But I think it's going to be first and foremost like figuring out the core, and can you come to terms with Austin before or right at the beginning of free agency? You got to figure out what's happening with LeBron. Are you rescinding the rights? Are you quickly agreeing to terms? Does he need more time? How does that process play out? And then what is realistic on the trade market and in free agency? So there's a lot of moving parts with it. As I continue to say, it'd be difficult to pin down exactly a name or series of moves, but I think that there's two clear needs with the starting center spot and the starting wing spot, and those will be the two areas that they try to address, be it in trade or free agency. Then we got a super chat here from Tanman. Thank you for the super chat. Duran for Lakers 5,190. Can we keep Reaves 2? So for the second part, yes, they can keep Austin Reaves if they were to sign Jalen Duran. So I continue to say that Austin Reaves' contract situation is separate from the Lakers cap space. Now, technically, it relates to the cap space in the sense of if Austin walks, the Lakers would get an additional $21 million in cap space, but you are not replacing Austin Reaves with $21 million. So assuming that they keep him on the cap hold and re-sign him to some number above that, which again, I think is the way this is going to play out, that projected cap space that the Lakers would have to sign Jalen Duran or make an offer sheet for him would be separate from Austin. So yes, they could keep Austin and sign Duran. So 5 years, 190 average annual value. Let's quickly, I think this is going to be just under $40 million, but yeah, $38 million. I would assume that would start in the low 30s and then increase by about 8%. Now, they can't sign Duran to a 5-year deal because he is not an incumbent free agent. They can only sign Duran to a 4-year deal. So could be something like 4,160, or if we did, 4,152 would be the average annual value equivalent. I could see something like that on the table. I'm a little lower on Duran than some. for example, I would rather have Walker Kessler than Jalen Duren. I think Kessler is a better rebounder, a better rim protector. Duren's offensive ceiling is higher, but we also saw he has a relatively low floor in these playoffs. The big questions with Kessler are just his health coming off of a season-ending shoulder situation, and we just have not seen him in any high-stakes moments or games, right? Like, he's not played in the playoffs. He hasn't even played in the play-in tournament. So we just don't know what he would look like. Some guys are playoff risers. Some guys are playoff droppers. Some guys are neutral. With Duren, it looks like for now he's going to be viewed as a playoff dropper. With Kessler, it's a mystery box. So I think you could get in the Duren conversation at that AAV, average annual value. I don't know that I would want to pay Duren that much money, though, based on the limitations that he just was outplayed by both Wendell Carter Jr. and Jared Allen in consecutive playoff series. And that is concerning, that especially based on he's going to be making almost double what Wendell Carter makes and 10 plus million more than what Jared Allen makes. Like, those guys are better values, if not just straight up better playoff performers. So I think it's possible they could sign him to this. I don't know that I would want to, though. I think it would have to, for me, it would probably have to drop 35 AAV or lower. It's Johnst Furman. Thank you for the super chat. Is LAL the only team that thinks they are better without LeBron? The LBJ convo is about ageism, plus he's cursed by his past success. He deserves a max 1+1. To this point, it's a very complicated conversation, as you are laying out here. I think you can argue that I think his max is a little high in terms of, I think his cap hold is nearly $60 million. And if you were actually giving him the max, that would be over 60, which I think is too high in my, like, regardless of the context of the Lakers cap situation and how that would hamstring their ability to add to the roster. I think that number to me is too high. If you're talking even 40, 45 million, I think he was at that level overall for the season. That's probably like fair. It's somewhere in that range to me is fair. Just if we're saying like market value based on production, based on performance, I think somewhere in that 40, 45. If you really wanted to argue up to 50, like I would entertain that. I don't think I would go above that. The issue here, and like, if the Lakers pay LeBron that much money, they have two pathways here. They can still be a cap space team, depending on where that number comes in, but have like very limited cap space remaining after that, plus have that room exception. Or they can operate as an above the cap team, but as an above the cap team, you are going to run it back and be like, okay, we're going to go above the cap to keep LeBron. We're going to pay Rui. We're going to pay Marcus. We're going to pay Luke. And we'll have some optionality to potentially get off Vando, Dalton, Jake, DeAndre, depending on if DeAndre opts in or not. But that's at most, you're talking $20 to $30 million to play with. And then you would also have the non-taxpayer MLE, assuming you're not above the first apron, depending on where the finances are coming in. So that to me is just not, I don't think that's good enough. I think you are running back a roster that was good, but you're assuming that there's a lot of assumptions about health. Like, we do have some open-ended questions about Luka's health, Austin's health, LeBron's health, Marcus's health. And I think to get off of some of those contracts, you would have to attach some real draft capital. You're not just getting off Vando willy-nilly. So I just think that they'd be in a tough spot where you're maybe adding one player for the non-taxpayer MLE, which I don't think you're getting a starting level player, or you're getting like a fringe starting level player. And then you have to use some serious draft capital to attach Vando with Dalton or Vando with DA or whatever, and try to find a contract that way. Like, you cannot take back money into your cap space. So I think there's two separate things going on here with the LeBron discourse. It's what is LeBron worth and what is best for the Lakers. I think those two things are at odds with one another, because if we want to talk pure value and pure, like, there's also the off-court value of just LeBron is still one of the most talked about, if not the most talked about superstar in the NBA. And there is a business draw to this, that there is a relevance draw to having LeBron that you can't necessarily quantify. So we could say 40, 45, 50, whatever number that ends up being. The issue is, if LeBron is getting paid that much, the Lakers are almost certainly going to either lose Marcus Smart and Rui Hachimura in pursuit of other players, or they're going to keep Marcus Smart and Rui Hachimura and have limited means to add to the roster. So if you pay LeBron that much, you are basically running it back. And I think the Lakers would have been more competitive if they were fully healthy and if Luka was there. They're not on the level of OKC and San Antonio. So you're at best the third best team in the NBA. And with how New York's looking, and Boston should be better next year with the healthy Tatum. Indiana is going to be bouncing back with the healthy Halliburton. Like, there's just, I think, going to be more competition toward the top of the league, to say nothing of whoever gets Giannis. So I think you could be running it back in a worse situation. So that's where to your point, I agree with like the deserve part. I'm not disagreeing with what LeBron deserves. I think LeBron does deserve, I wouldn't say his current projected max, but like a max level deal. Sure. Like he was still, I think all things considered in totality of this past year, a top 25 guy, and was a top 10 playoff guy. But the issue is for the Lakers, like they're at this sort of crossroads of they're trying to build a future core that LeBron will only be a part of for at most 1 to 2 years. So there is this element of they need to find ways to cut money. And one of the most obvious ways is for him to take a pay cut. And if he does not, then that opens up a bunch of other conversations of, does that mean he's out? Does that mean, like, how did the Lakers move from that point on? There's just a lot of questions that stem from this question, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. LA824, thank you for the super chat. With the 3-2-1 lottery only approved through 2029, will teams be more aggressive or more cautious about stockpiling future first-round picks? Does that uncertainty change the Lakers' strategy? Good question here. I think it will... It'll make the Lakers picks more valuable. And that was part of what I have in the show title here. Like the Lakers future firsts are now more valuable. I don't know how much more valuable. I think I've seen some people say like they've doubled in value. I think that's a bit aggressive, but you could say they've increased by like maybe 25%, 30% in value, which is a notable amount. And that to me makes, so I mean, maybe putting 2 firsts on the table is more equivalent to almost putting 3 firsts on the table, or 2.5, 2.6, 2.7, whatever, which you round up and it's closer to 3. Like maybe some of the conversations that the Lakers couldn't get in with their 2 future firsts are now conversations they can get in. And whether that's in a potential trade for Giannis or a potential trade for Trey Murphy or whoever is the top player or the top players on the trade market, I think the Lakers have more at their disposal here in terms of those 2 picks and those 2 picks increasing in value. On the flip side, I think teams are going to be more conservative and cautious with trying to trade their future picks, and the asking price for a future first and that negotiation is going to be, I think, more deliberate from teams across the league. So one of the things that I think immediately comes out of this is like teams are probably going to be trading even less. And that's the way that a lot of these moves with the cap and the second apron, and then some of the stuff here with now the lottery and the future picks, like you might see an increase in some of the future picks, but within the next few years picks, like teams are going to take some recalibration, I think, with the values of these things and just how some of these things play out, because there is this element of, especially if you're like a fringe playoff team, all of a sudden that might be a sweet spot in terms of getting a top 5 pick or even a the top pick, right? So it does flattening the odds a bit and adding some more variance here for some of the teams in the middle and de-incentivizing being a bottom 3 team. That is going to lead, it's going to make the end of the season more interesting because teams are going to be trying to win to get out of the bottom 3. But it also means if you're in spots like 4 to 14, you have a decent chance to move up and potentially get a top 3 pick. So I don't know how much it changes the Lakers strategy yet. My assumption here would be it does embolden them to be more aggressive on the trade market and have more at their disposal, depending on how aggressive they want to be with the picks. They have not been aggressive with their picks over the last few years. They've been very cautious with trading future draft capital. And I understand that to a degree. It allowed them, there were moves they could have made that had they made those moves, they would not have been able to execute the Luka deal because they would not have had the extra picks. So that patience did pay out in a real way. At the same time, they are now in a situation where there's a lot of pressure on this summer. They have to nail this summer. And if they can't nail it through free agency, they're going to have to nail it through trade. And there are some scenarios in which they could land some difference makers without giving up draft capital. But I think most scenarios are going to require some form of draft capital. And that's on the Lakers to figure out which pick is it, how much do they value it, and which guys are they willing to give up draft capital for. So I don't think it changes their strategy in a material way, but I think it puts them in a situation where they can be more aggressive on the trade market and potentially add someone. I think it's going to be easier to add someone now compared to as recently as 48 hours ago. I will say B6X, thank you for the super chat. Off topic, you have to build a team to beat OKC's 10-man rotation rules. You can only pick 2 stars, have at least 1 all-star game appearance in their career. Can't pick from OKC, must have played 1 game in 2025-26. This is fun. So, I mean, it's going to be tough to build a 10-man rotation in the next couple minutes, but I'll start with Wemby. I think Wemby this is some of the worst basketball we've seen Shai Gilgeous-Alexander play, and got to give a ton of credit to Stephon Castle as the primary point of attack guy, ISO guy, playing a lot of one-on-one against him. But Wemby lurking has clearly affected Shai to some degree, and he's just a cheat code defensively. So I would pick Wemby as my primary star. Again, okay, if I could go Wemby and Luka, that's great, right? I feel like that's cheating a little bit. So I don't want to go with 2 top 5 guys. That to me is, so I would pick Wemby as my cheat code defensively against OKC. I mean, he's also disrupted Chet. He's disrupted a lot of their stuff at the rim and in the paint. So it's that would be, I think we're seeing the proof of concept here of having Wemby as your best player against OKC specifically. Second guy, I mean, can I go Castle? They might win game 7. I picked OKC in 7. I still think that's my prediction right now, but San Antonio might win. I think you would need, you'd want you'd probably want a better lead guard than Castle, Fox, or Harper, but also someone who could hold their own defensively. So again, without picking a Luka or a Cade or a Brunson or a Maxey, I feel like that's cheating a bit. I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think in the chat. Who are some of the names that curious to know what you guys think. But I would say in general, I think the Spurs are the closest team to being the antidote to OKC. So I think what you need are guys who have physical advantage, real physical advantages. I think we've seen that play out in the backcourt, where OKC has a speed advantage against most backcourts. San Antonio is one of the few that they do not. And you have Harper and Castle who not only are as fast as OKC's guards, but they're also bigger and stronger than them. And then Fox is one of the fastest players in the league, and he has not been himself because of injuries. But I think that mold of being fast, athletic, tough, a bunch of two-way guys, a certain level of shooting, because OKC is going to, just based on their defensive system, they are going to give up a ton of corner and weak side threes. You need a group that can, just a bunch of versatile perimeter guys that are athletic and can shoot. And I think San Antonio is pretty close to that. I think we saw Indiana was in that mold as well. Denver was unique because it was more through Jokic and Murray and that two-man game. But their guys shot well between Gordon and I guess that was pretty much it off the top. I feel like Brown was okay in that series, but MPJ was obviously up and down. Protect MJ says Ant-Man's up there. Yeah, Ant-Man's up there. I mean, I think Luka's up there because of the step back, and we've seen Luka have success against OKC before in 2024 and 2025. Like, he had a really rough season series against OKC this year, but he only played them twice. So I think with a larger sample size, he would look better. It's a fun question though. I wish I had more time. Like, this is a normal stream and I was going in for 2 hours. I would want to dive more into that. But I think to the point of, I think Wemby would be my star pick. And then from there, I would want a big athletic ball handling guard. And then I would want a bunch of two-way athletes. That would be my way to attack OKC. The Billy 0304, thank you for the super chat. I know we're in win now mode, but would it be too much of a gamble to bet on a dude Bronny to be 9th, 10th man? Have to have someone on the cheap in the rotation. I would say 9th, yes. I think both of them would have to show, or either one of them would have to show tremendous growth to warrant being the 9th man on a true contender. 10th, because 10th to me is like a fringe rotation guy. I think most teams go with an 8 to 9 man rotation. Come playoff time, you're typically going to shave a guy out of the rotation unless you're OKC, and you're going to be going with a 7 or 8 man rotation. So I think it's really imperative that spots 1 through 9 are bulletproof and are. I have a show coming out next week with Claire DeLune talking through our lessons from the conference finals. And specifically, I've done this show now 3 years in a row where I look at the 4 conference finalists and I say, what can the Lakers learn from each team, whether it's the roster build, whether it's the style of play, the system, whatever, what can the Lakers take and apply to themselves? And with San Antonio, for example, one of the things I really like is you look at their top 9, top 10, there's a lot of symmetry in their rotation where they have multiple players in a couple buckets. So, I mean, in general, they have like the backcourt guys who are all interchangeable, all fit with one another. You could go with any of the, I would say Fox, Harper, Castle, Vassell. You could play 2 of those guys together. You could play 3 of those guys together. They all fit very well. Then you have the front court guys with Johnson and Champagny and Barnes and Carter Bryant. And those 4 guys, you could play any 2 of them together, and they all have relative similarities in terms of their shot profile. And Barnes isn't the defender that the other guys are, but sort of like general outline of 3 and D-ish front court guys. And then you have Wemby and Cornette. And Cornette was a top 5 rim protector this year. We've seen his limitations in the OKC series, but in terms of realistic backup bigs, Cornette, if you're trying to mimic what Wemby does, Cornette is on the short list of a backup who could come in and be an elite rim protector. So it's like they have all this symmetry in their rotation that I think the Lakers having that with their top 9 would be something I would strive for. But in terms of the 10th man, I would like Adu and Bronny to not be in the top 10. I would like them to be even more in like the 12th, 13th range. And that would just be a testament to LA's depth, in my opinion. But certainly if one of them pops in summer league and one of them pops in training camp, one of them pops in the preseason, I would say if they deserve to be the 9th or 10th man, that's a win for LA. That's a win for their development. If they are sort of given the 9th or 10th role, that to me is a disappointing roster outcome that's a disappointment to the offseason. So if they deserve it, that's a totally different conversation. If the Lakers don't have better options and it's just like, we kind of got to throw a Do or Bronny in there, that to me would be a mistake and would be really disappointing. Revive Gamer HD, thank you for the super chat. You think the Lakers finally trade a first for a wing? I think they will trade a first. I don't know if they're going to trade both firsts. And it's going to come down to, in my opinion, best player available, whether that's a center or a wing. So whoever is the best possible center or wing that fits within their price point of the assets they want to give up, I think they will do that. So I think between the two, because we could go through some of the names, right? So on the center market, it could be a Jared Allen, it could be a Nick Claxton, it could be an Isaiah Hartenstein, Wendell Carter, maybe. On the wing market, you have Lou Dort, you have Jalen Suggs, you like Herb Jones, maybe for a first you could get. I think they would want more, but we'll see if they'd be doing that for like Trey Murphy. You're not getting for a first. I don't think you're getting for two firsts. So it just depends on, of the players I just listed, I actually prefer the centers to the wings and would probably prefer to trade for a center and then try to get a wing in free agency. But I think they will invest a first in acquiring someone for the roster. Randiculous 310, thank you for the super chat. Yo, how about Geeter as a new guest on the pod? Top tier Lakers reporter and epic super fan. Would love to hear a convo away from Spectrum censorship. That is a great idea. I've talked to Geeter, I've talked to Brez, I've talked to Ali, all about coming on the show. I think I would have to get permission. Like there's a whole process to get them on. And but yeah, I love Geeter. Geeter's the man, and would love to have him on. And I think it would be a really fun conversation. So let's make it happen. I will talk to him. Lennon, Lakers GM, thank you for the super chat. How about stealing Kessler from Utah, trading 2 firsts for Herb and Sadiq Bey? If LeBron wants to return to that, cool. If not, time to cut the cord. You're speaking my language here. Kessler is my number one free agent target, and 2 firsts for Herb and Sadiq. To me, it's like a little rich, but might just be the asking price or the going price to get 2 guys of that with those skill sets. And then, so you would be going into next year potentially with Kessler, LeBron, Herb, Austin, Luka, and your bench would be, you could have Marcus, Rui, Sadiq Bey, Jackson, plus something else. Maybe Jake develops as a shooter and Jake is your 10th man, or Adu pops and he's your 10th man, or you sign someone for a vet minimum. I like that rotation a lot more. I think that's a much better, more complete roster. And especially my goal, I continue to state, is add a starting center, add a starting wing, and slot Marcus and Rui as your 6th and 7th men. If the Lakers can go into next season with a clear upgrade over DA, an upgrade over Marcus, and Marcus and Rui as your 6th and 7th men, plus the big 3, like that top 7, I think is up there with any top 7 in the NBA. Depends on who the center and the wing are. If it's like a marginal upgrade over DA, if it's a marginal upgrade over Marcus, maybe not. But I think that would now, like once you start getting to spots 8, spots 9, spots 10, that's where I think the depth with OKC or San Antonio or some of these other teams will be a differentiating factor. But in terms of like the top 7, if the Lakers have the big 3 plus 2 good starters, plus Marcus and Rui, I think that's a really strong top 7. Mickey, thank you for the super chat. Would turning Vando and DK to Herb and Misi and running it back with using MLE to give Smart a small raise and someone else? So Vando and DK for Herb and Misi, I think that would be 2 firsts, because I think it would be a first for Herb and then a first to get off Vando. So I would reframe this as Vando and DK plus 2 firsts for Herb and Misi. And then you're saying running it back using MLE. So this would be, you're saying operate as an above the cap team and then use the taxpayer MLE, give Marcus. So or you're saying use the MLE to give Marcus a raise, because that's a key thing that I tried to lay out with my off-season where I did a mailbag recently where I talked through some of the offseason stuff. And one thing to remember with Marcus is the Lakers have limited bird rights on Marcus. So the most the Lakers can actually offer Marcus if he opts out is, well, there's three things they could offer him. They could offer him a $6.3 million contract, which would be the biggest raise they can offer him. Or they could offer to sign him with cap space, or they could offer to sign him with an exception. Now, if the Lakers are a cap space team, the only exception they would have would be that $9.3 million cap hole, room exception, which that could be enough for Marcus. I think that's a little low, but maybe Marcus is willing to sign for that. If they're an above the cap team, then they get the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which is about in between $15 to $16 million starting out. And you don't have to use all of that on Marcus. You could split, like the Lakers split this past year, that between Jake and DA. So you can use part of it on Marcus and then still have maybe use 10 on Marcus or 12 on Marcus. And then you have somewhere between 4 to 6 million left. And you could use that on Jackson, or you could use that on a different free agent that you pay a little bit more than a minimum. So again, to recap, if they're trying to use bird rights to offer Marcus something, it's a minimal raise of, like, if he's opting out of a $5.3 million deal, I don't think he's signing a $6.3 million deal. So that one I think is off the table. It's really, are you going to use cap space for him, or are you going to use one of your exceptions depending on if you're above the cap or under the cap? So I just wanted to give some context there with Marcus. This one, I would say this would be my minimum of what I would want from the offseason. Like, you are getting off of some money in Vando and DK. You are upgrading those cap spots with Herb and Misi. You are addressing, I think, the perimeter defense need to a degree with Herb. Misi still undetermined what his future is in the league in terms of, is he a starter? Is he a bench guy? For now, I would peg him more as a bench guy, but could grow into being a starting level player. And then you retain Marcus, you retain Rui, you retain LeBron. And so you basically have this year's group with Herb added, which is, I think, a big addition. And you can move Marcus to a bench role and reduce his minutes a little bit to keep him fresh for the entirety of the season. And then Misi, you can maybe start him. It depends what happens with DA as well, and what other, are you trying to trade for a center in addition to this, or how are you trying to fill that center spot? But if you just go in the next season with like Misi, LeBron, Herb, Austin, and Luka, I think that's with still having Marcus as a bench guy, Rui as a bench guy, etc. I like that group better, but I don't think you're on the OKC San Antonio level, and I still think you would lose to both those teams in a playoff series. Notorious CRG. Thank you for the super chat. I don't know if you've already covered this, but do you think it's fair to ask LeBron to take less money than AR in order for them to both be there? I've not answered this, and let's dive into this. So I have covered earlier in the show. I was asked about that, whether it's fair to ask LeBron to take a pay cut in general. And the thing that I laid out with this is that LeBron is worth, I think 40, 45, 50. You want to put, like, argue that he's worth that based on his production, based on his performance this past season. He was an all-star. He helped the Lakers win a playoff series as the lead guy, put them on his back. You can say, like, he is worth somewhere in that range. I do not disagree. I think the issue is, based on the Lakers' finances and based on their current cap situation, and Austin being a long-term piece and LeBron not being a long-term piece, that's where they just are in the situation where, to add to the roster, they need to shed salary. And now there's other, like, they can be more aggressive and be like, we want to get off Vando, we want to get off Jake, but that's going to cost you draft capital. And that means, because they have limited draft capital, that means you don't have that draft capital to upgrade the roster via trade necessarily, depending on how much you are giving up. So I think right now, the central thing with the LeBron conversation is, LeBron believes he's worth X amount of money, and he is worth X amount of money. The issue is, for the Lakers, if they pay him X amount of money, they are going to be hamstrung in terms of adding to the roster and potentially even lose. Like there's a version of, I mean, maybe if they operate above the cap, they can keep everybody. Maybe they lose Marcus, but just imagine for a second, like they pay LeBron 50, 55, 60, whatever. They keep Rui and then they lose Marcus and they add one player with the non-taxpayer MLE. And it's like, is that player even better than Marcus to begin with? I don't know. I can't tell you without knowing who that player is. But if you basically run it back with this year's group, plus maybe the 25 pick, and then you swap out Marcus for a similar player, or maybe even like a little bit of a better player, is that group meaningfully better? I would argue no. And there's still some risk of, like, LeBron, in my opinion, did slip a little bit compared to last season. He was not the same player overall. I thought the jumper wasn't the same. The handle wasn't the same. The ability to score in isolation was not the same as last year when he finished 6th in MVP, 6th in All-NBA. Like his highs to me were not as high as last season's highs. So even if we dock him like 3 to 5% going into next season, which I think is a realistic assumption here, that he'll still be an all-star level guy, still be in that top 30 conversation or whatever, but I think just naturally Father Time is going to continue to take away a little bit from him. If you're saying like LeBron maybe isn't the same, let's just say Luka and Austin are the same, and you potentially have a worse roster, like what are we talking about here? Like it's a worse group, and you're gonna probably lose in round 2 again. So that's, I think, the central tension with the LeBron conversation. Now here's the final thing. The biggest difference, I would say, I mean, there's 2 big differences between LeBron and Austin right now. One, LeBron is a short-term solution. Austin is viewed by the franchise as a long-term cornerstone. So if it comes down to, would you rather pay Austin $40 million for the next 5 years or LeBron $40 million for 1 year, they're going to prioritize the long-term contract here. So that's just, like, Austin is more of a priority for the Lakers than LeBron is. That's just a fact. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is that Austin is going to have a market, and LeBron, maybe he wants to go to Chicago or Brooklyn. I do not foresee that. But the issue with LeBron is that all of the teams that are going to want LeBron are going to have somewhere between a vet minimum offer and a non-taxpayer MLE offer. So LeBron can't leverage the market against the Lakers the same way Austin can. Austin can go get a monster contract offer from Chicago or a monster contract offer from Brooklyn and put pressure on the Lakers to be like, they're about to pay me $40 million annually. You need, maybe I'll take a haircut off of that, but you need to give me that 5th year, and it needs to be pretty close to $40 million. LeBron is not going to have the same leverage. Like, so on some level, I think it's really a leverage thing where Austin has leverage in terms of being a long-term piece for the franchise, where LeBron is at most a 2-year piece, not 1 to 2 year piece. And then Austin can actually go out and get a max offer from people that LeBron is just not going to go get because he doesn't want to go play in Brooklyn or Chicago, and he doesn't really fit their timeline either. So that's where I think the key thing is, like, it's not about like who's better or who is better for next season. It's about, like, longer term. The Lakers want to retain Austin and retain that asset. And then Austin also is going to have some more competition on the market than LeBron is. Like, LeBron can't say, oh, the Cavs are going to pay me $40 million. You have to pay me $40 million. That's just not possible. So that's where I think from a leverage perspective, Austin has more leverage in this situation. And Austin, I think, is going to get a bigger contract with the Lakers because of that, or partly because of that. And just a quick note, I do have to go in a few minutes. I have a hard out here. TM 1871, thank you for the super chat. Given Bronny's improvement, do you see him factoring into the rotation? Might the Lakers lean on him and Adu to bolster the back end? So second question here about Bronny and Adu. I think I would say Bronny would need to continue to improve at a similar rate to the improvement we saw this season. So I don't think, like, Bronny had flashes, but I think him being a rotation guy was more circumstantial than anything. Like we saw when the Lakers added Austin into the rotation, Bronny immediately came out of the rotation. And I would suspect that if Luka was there as well, like if Luka and Austin were healthy from game one of the Rockets series, I don't think Bronny would have been a rotation player. I think Bronny was a rotation player because LA was without its two best ball handlers and they needed some backcourt juice and they needed some ball handling and some point of attack defense. So I think Bronny still has a ways to go, in my opinion, to be a true every night rotation guy. Now, does he continue to develop this summer? Does he continue to develop in training camp and preseason? That I don't have a crystal ball with that, but if he does, then I think he can make a case for that. I continue to say though, like it also depends on what happens with Marcus, what happens with some of the other guys, because if you have Luka, Austin, LeBron, Marcus, that's a ton of ball handling already across those four as like primary ball handlers for a lineup. Don't know what's going to happen with Luke Kennard. So I just wonder where Bronny slots in offensively. Like he did play a bit more off the ball with later in the season and just sort of more. Sometimes he'd bring the ball up, but he was more so catch and shoot, weak side guy, secondary playmaker. So maybe he continues in that role. I just think it depends on the makeup of the roster. I think Adu is between the two. I think Adu is far more likely to be a rotation guy because Adu has a clear skill set that the Lakers like desperately need as a 6'7", 6'8" elite athlete who can jump out of the gym, high motor, projects to be an elite defender or at least a really good defender. And so Adu, really good rebounder. Adu checks a lot of boxes of what the Lakers need. So between the two, I would say Adu is more likely to be a rotation guy than Bronny, at least next season. But certainly that, like, if the Lakers invest heavily in the starting group or the middle top of the roster, then I think they are going to need to have some hits toward the back end. And that's where Adu or Bronny popping would be really nice. If they don't hit at the top end of the roster and it's more of a depth play, that's where I could see those guys potentially being slotted a little bit lower in the hierarchy. But I think it'd be a win for them if either one of these guys is a deserving rotation guy next year. And it's not a circumstantial thing where there's injuries leading to it. Like if Bronny or Adu is so good that you can't keep them off the floor, I think that would be great for the Lakers. WCA says that would be nice to see Thiero evolve into a second string. Yeah, I think he has a ways to go offensively. Like the defensive flashes, the rebounding flashes, the athleticism flashes were all encouraging last season, but he is incredibly raw on the offensive end. So I think between his ball handling, passing, shooting, decision-making, processing, those are all things that he really needs to work on this offseason and go into Summer League, show some growth there. Like, I would love to see a Max Christie level. Remember Max Christie's second Summer League, he's all of a sudden a primary ball handler. He's dishing out 3, 4, 5 assists, and that never materialized at the NBA level in terms of Max being a primary ball handler or this like great passer. But we did see, I think, before Max was traded, and we saw, but we've seen some of it with him in Dallas, like, Max to me does have more skill than the typical 3-and-D catch and shoot, just spot up. Like he's got some, he can attack off of closeouts and make moves. And I think part of that was stuff he developed that offseason and getting those reps in Summer League. So I would like to see Thiero get some of that and start to show some of that progress. Sky Falcon, Jovan, are you going to a finals game in New York? Unfortunately not. I will be out there for game 1. But that will be either in Oklahoma City or San Antonio. So I'll be watching game 7, try to find a sports bar or something. I think that would be fun to watch it, especially with a bunch of Knicks fans, because they're going to be going crazy either way. And then I'll be out there for game 1 as well. But that will be a road game, not in New York. So it would have been great to catch a final. But again, I could also watch that at a sports bar and get the Knicks fan experience there. So I'm looking forward to it. Kennedy 82. Do you think LeBron, Rui, Luka, Vando isn't too many of the same kind of player? I think it is. And that's partly why I think Vando is going to be someone that they try to trade and get off that contract. I also think there's an element of, if you are retaining LeBron, you might have, like, I think putting Vando to the side, because Vando to me, even if he stays, is not an every night rotation player. JJ just doesn't believe in him or view him that way. the LeBron, Rui, Luka part, I think there is a lot of overlap there, more so defensively. And I don't think those three guys can play together in serious moments. And so you're kind of in this position where you can only play two of the three. And that's fine. Like, that can work. I'm not saying it can't, but if you need to prioritize getting a bigger two-way forward or just another two-way wing or two-way guard or whatever, I think that might come at the cost of Rui. That might be the guy that it ultimately, because I believe between, like, Luka is obviously untouchable for the Lakers, but if it's between LeBron, Rui, like deciding between LeBron and Rui, I think the Lakers will prioritize LeBron, assuming that the contract is not 50 plus million. All right, I'm going to wrap here, though. I do have to go to the airport. Appreciate you guys for rocking with me for about 50 minutes. I will have a new episode coming out on Monday, and then I'll be back later in the week, TBD on what day. I will be off Lakers Collective this week. First couple shows I'm going to be missing, unfortunately, but spending some much needed family time and vacation time with my wife and my son. My mom's going to be out there, my brother. So family affair. But shout out to the chat. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Talk to you guys next week. Enjoy your weekend.